So what we saw last time is we were talking about the spread of Islam, we were talking about the Qur'an, talking about just some of those things you need to know to understand Islam. Now, the major aspect of Islam that you need to understand is what are called the Hadith. All right, we left with this slide, gives you some background to the warfare, but the Hadith, these are the statements of Muhammad. There were a lot of stories that were being passed down. There was a lot of various rumors and other things that were being spread around. And so in order to combat some of the false information that was being spread and all of that, you had a guy by the name of al-Bukhari who sat down and came up with more or less the science of the Hadith. And so these records, these writings were collected hundreds of years later, and they depended on what are called Isnad chains. Now, Isnad chains are chains of transmission where basically you say, I heard it from so-and-so, who heard it from so-and-so, who heard it from so-and-so, and you trace that all the way back to one of Muhammad's companions. So it might be, Aisha said to so-and-so, who said to so-and-so, who said to so-and-so, and I'll show you a picture of it. It's pretty impressive. But if you can get a story through multiple Isnad chains, then you know that this is more or less the truth, at least according to this science. The Sunnah is a term. So you'll hear people talk about the Sunnah of the Prophet, things like that. Generally, it's all information that came down from Muhammad. So he's going to teach on pretty much everything under the sun. There's one hadith that talks, well, probably more than one. It's been a while since I've read them. But there's one hadith that's talking about how much water he and Aisha used to bathe. Okay, just all sorts of things. It can be embarrassing to listen to around other people. I was definitely doing that one year, and then I kind of realized some of the subject matter. And if you walk in and people don't know what you're talking about, and it's talking about these two people bathing and how many buckets of water they used and all of that, it's read with discernment. So that's why I have headphones now. But the Sunnah, like I said, has a broad range of meanings, but generally it's all information that came down from Muhammad. The Hadith literally means something that is new, but this is where the Sunnah are going to be preserved. So the teachings of Muhammad are going to be preserved in the Hadith. Let me show you a picture here of the Isnad chain. Now the Isnad chain obviously is going to go all the way back, and so you're going to have a ton of people. And so let's say you have Abbas, who's one of these guys here. And what's going to happen is, let's say Ibn Abbas, he is going to pass information down on to Salma. And you're going to have this entire line down the left-hand side of the screen. You're going to have an entire line down the middle left, the right. These are all the lines of transmission. And so if we've got the guy here in, I'll use my mouse to kind of highlight this. So let's say we've got, this is the original story. And he is going to pass information on down here. Well, he passed this information on to about 6 different guys. 6. All right? So he's passing it on down here, he's passing it on down here, and here, and here, and here. And so you've got this information being passed down and down and down and down. And these are eventually going to start, obviously, the stories are going to start to shift a little bit. But what you can do is you can compare all these different lines, and they are eventually going to come together in the different hadith collections. And so this is more or less what it's going to look like if you follow down. And so all the orangish red lines are going to collect together in Sahih al-Bukhari. All the blue lines are going to collect together in Sahih Muslim. All the dark blue lines are going to come here to the Musnad of Ahmed. And then you got Al-Tirmidhi, you've got Ibn Mahaj. I cannot speak today. And so Sunan Ibn Dawood. So you've got the different collections and where they come from. The more lines of transmission you have, the more reliable your hadith are. And so that's why Sahih Muslim and Sahih al-Bukhari, those are going to be like the major ones that are really well accepted, because you can see they come from a massive line of transmission. And so that's how those are going to work. And so you will see when you read the hadith, it'll say, so-and-so passed on this information. And in the Arabic, it's going to, have the full line of transmission. Typically when they translate it over, which is interesting because, the translation's only been available for about the last 30 years. And so this is some new information for Islamic studies. Now, there are what are considered majority scholars. These are scholars of the Isnad chains and all of this. And so it's a whole field of study in the Islamic community. And so the Sunnah, which are the teachings of Muhammad, and the Qur'an, which is the words of Allah passed down through Muhammad, because the the Hadith are going to cover some things that the Quran doesn't. They are substantially more impactful. They're substantially more widespread in topics. They're way larger in just shelf space. But from a legal standpoint for Muslim jurisprudence, they are going to have equal weight. They do differentiate them in holiness or blessing. So the Quran is going to come out on top in that case. But if something is condemned in the Hadith, it will be equal to the condemnation given in the Quran. So there are things, and that's where the Sunni and the Shia are going to argue, because they view different Hadith as authoritative. So that is going to change their doctrine. And so that is something you got to take into account. And so that's just a little bit there about the Hadith. We will pick up here next time and learn more about the Quran and all of that good stuff as we finish off this first series on the Quran.